Hello everybody, it's Mr. Koenig here, wanting to talk to you a little bit about adding layers and saving layers, because this is part of your Try One final. And if you follow along today, you'll have a really good start on kind of meeting that requirement for adding a layer and saving a layer. And I think there's some good things that you're going to be able to learn because you've added a layer before, but it was all following directions, and we all pretty much added the same layer. So now you're going to have to kind of search for your own layer because your parks are going to be different, and the things that you're going to want to add for a layer might be different too. So the goals for today in this Edpuzzle are we're going to find and save an invasive species layer. We'll find and save a social historical layer. And then we'll also look at adding some other layers using some keywords. Okay? So that's where we're going to go with this today. I'm going to log into, or I already logged into my ArcGIS account, and I hit the Maps button, right? So you guys might have something, when you log in, again, just kind of as a reset, looks like that, but make sure you hit the Map button. And then we're going to add some layers, and really, guys, what we'd like you to do and learn is like ArcGIS is a good tool for learning things, okay? So having some inquiry, having some investigation to learn a few things. I'm going to give you a few good layers to get you started, and then hopefully you're going to come up with some of your own layers here that you can save as well. So to get us started though, one thing that we had you guys all look for as the environmental lens was invasive species. So I'm going to add, like we've done before, search for layers. I have not made an invasive species layer, so it's not under my content, and I doubt you have too. So you got to go to ArcGIS Online, and played around with Miss Dingate, and I played around with this a lot, and we found like a really good layer, and one that kind of speaks to that Minnesota Department of Agriculture invasive species is if you type in MDA and then noxious, like a noxious weed, and you will see a few things pop up. Now you can play with some of these, but they're not the best. What we actually found, if I add that to my map, it looks like this. Now that isn't a really good description of what we got going on here. So if I zoom in on it, it just looks like a map. A lot of green on there. It's hard to kind of delineate things. So what I need to do, and hopefully you guys remember this, is if I go to details, and if I hit that details, kind of that content button again, and if I open this up a bit, you'll see that it actually breaks down all the different invasive species. So if I click off them all, you see that my map gets a little less green. And all the way, and if I click off all of them, it just basically looks like the regular map of Minnesota. Now, let's say I wanted to look at, I don't know, maybe I saw garlic mustard for my first invasive species assignment. And if I click garlic mustard, you will now see the areas of Minnesota that are kind of the highest concern for garlic mustard. And you can actually save that map then if your invasive species was garlic mustard, or maybe some of you had common buckthorn, and that's what that looks like. And I would even zoom in real close to where my map is, or where my park was, to show exactly how much of that area is surrounded by common buckthorn, or how much of the area is surrounded by Canadian thistle, or so on and so forth, all the way through all of the invasive species. But that is a good thing to add. I will just choose, just for the sake of this, purple loosestrife. That is a pretty common water invasive species. You can see that the darker areas are along the lines of a lot of our rivers and streams here. So if I found a spot that I would like to take a look at, and maybe my park, if I outlined it somewhere, we'll talk a little bit about how to add your park in later. But this could be a layer that I would use because this is an invasive species. I could also change the transparency here. so that I can see through my map a little bit. And again, that's going to be under details and content, and you can play with that a little bit more. But if I wanted to save this, I just go to save as, and then I would call it, you know, purple loosestrife or something like that. Okay, and then I can add the tag and go on and so forth and save that. And that way when I want to transfer that over to my story map, it's right there. Okay, so that's a little bit on an invasive species. The other one that we kind of wanted you guys to get a handle on is the social and historical layer. So I can add and search a layer again. And instead of having like a noxious weed, one thing that we looked at, maybe native lands. That is a historical factor here. Now you can see some of these say COVID. That's not really what I'm looking for. And if you click on some of these things, you might have to play around a little bit with it. But I already have, and I found that this was a really good one. It's called Native American Ceded Lands. So if I add that on my map, and I'm actually going to get, because now it gets a little bit busy here, so I can go back into details and get rid of the weeds distribution one. But as you can see, I can click on these and it says who the nation was that ceded that land, which basically tells me what tribe lived around my park. So if I have my park outlined, I can actually figure out the tribe that lived near my park. So you might then say, does your park speak to some of this? Does your park have anything on, you know, the Menominee tribe or the Red Lake Chippewa tribe? So when you're looking at and kind of analyzing your park for all these different aspects of it, make sure this is a way that you can kind of jump in and see if they are addressing the tribal lands and the tribal people that live there. And it's a kind of a good way to see who lived in that area. And you can kind of play around with the shapes there a little bit too. And that'll maybe make it a little bit more clear as you if you want to as well. So that's another cool layer that you can maybe add, that can add to your maps overall and into your story map. And once you have that, again, you can save that too. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit today about, and the last thing, is how to just have some different keywords. So for instance, a student talked to me a little bit about, well, all those MDA maps, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture maps, are only about invasive plants. What if I have an invasive animal? Well, yeah, that's something that you could probably search up. So if I search for layers and I looked for like a zebra mussel, which is an invasive animal, because this person said that they did have some information on zebra mussels, I can add a layer here on zebra mussels, and that can give me a little bit of where those are at, perhaps. It's not popping up. All right, so there it actually ended up popping up here. So I can see kind of where all the zebra mussels have been. I'm gonna actually get rid of the native lands now, and you can see, okay, there's my zebra mussels. So that's another way to kind of like search for a layer just using some keywords. And this is going to come up pretty important if you're trying to find another environmental layer, if you wanted to add one. Another social layer. You can think about different keywords maybe to throw in that you could then find on a map. Okay? So to kind of go back to what we talked about in our goals, we wanted to find and save an invasive species layer. Remember that MDA, noxious weeds, is a good layer to search, and then you can kind of play around with that to see what map you'd want to use and what map you'd want to save. Save, always save, remember. and that'll then be your map. That'll be your map that you can add into your story map. We wanted to find and save a social historical layer, and a good one that we looked at was looking at native lands, because that gives us all the native lands, and it actually talks about all the treaties. That there's a layer that has all the treaties, and those treaties also show who owned that land or who lived in that land beforehand. And then we can also look for other layers using keywords. So maybe you have something you want to add to your map or something unique to your park that you would maybe want to add as a layer. Well, you can think of different keywords to search, and that'll give you options on other layers to add on your map that you can then save and then add into your story map later. So again, this is just kind of getting you started and queued up to how to add different layers, and then how to make a map, and then how to add, and then we'll add those maps like you did with your Oak story map. We'll add those maps to your story map to give us good spatial data, and that'll add a bit of professionalism, and it'll add another sort of resource into your story map that will hopefully help your audience learn more about your park. Okay, thank you so much. I am going to stop this video and have a great day.